So it's been at least a week since version 3.1 released, and I did the quest last Feb 7, basically 2 Saturdays ago. For a brief summary of my experience of the quest before we go into what I really want to talk about for today's video, you know, 3 hours into the quest, basically the scene where Imith finally got her much awaited concert, I was like, finally, we're done with the quest. It was long, had a couple of bathroom breaks, but it's over, and we're leaving on a high note. But as soon as the next scene loaded and we're controlling Sigillum, I instantly knew to myself, ah, yes, the pain train. The pain train has arrived. We're not leaving this quest as a happy player, huh? And when the last 30 minutes of the quest unfolded against my wishes, I basically finished the quest in a terrible state. The ending was horrible. No person or character, in the case of Rover, should ever be forced to witness their child disappear right before their eyes, while they can't do anything about it. 3.1 is definitely the worst quest in Wuthering Waves to date, on the basis that it ruined Rover in more ways than one. He or she just met their daughter and lost her in the same quest. I mean, if you know Lord of the Rings, King Theoden, as portrayed by the late but great Bernard Hill, he said it himself what any self respecting parent would tell you. No parent deserves seeing their child go before them. Now, as for today's video, there are three things that I realized for myself ever since I finished this quest. One of them is something that I've observed in the community, and the other two are simply things about myself going forward. So, for the thing I've observed in the community, for context, I've played a bunch of live service games and followed a bunch of anime and manga over the years. So, watching community reactions to any story's latest development, that isn't new to me. What caught my interest was that 3.1 main quest did something so different. I don't remember seeing such a phenomenon occur on the scale that it had in the stories I've followed in the past. And what is that phenomenon? The fact that it sent the entire community, not just EN, not just JP, not just KR, but all of those communities, including CN, they collectively went on a meltdown, so much that just about everyone is now theory crafting on how Rover could save Imyth. I've never seen anything like this. Normally, studying about a game's lore, usually that's reserved for a highly invested audience, a very small portion of any story's total audience. But after 3.1, even the casuals are trying to chime in and are learning what they could about the lore, just to look for ways to figure out the IMIT situation. I've seen the Chisa theories, the Uno theories, the boatload of references as early as 1.0 with Save the World, Save the Cat. I've never experienced anything like this in any game or story I've followed. 3.1 sent the Wuthering Waves community to a level of desperation that every quest before 3.1 is suddenly a potential clue on how to save Imyth. That's absolutely insane to think about. It's just surreal. A single quest tapped into the parental instincts of an entire community. And here's the thing, no matter how elaborate or logical the theory crafting is, at the end of the day, nothing really guarantees that those theories are what's going to happen in future versions of the game. So, where does this leave us, the players? Simple, really. We're currently in a situation where, sure, that theory crafting wouldn't magically alter the course of the story, but no self respecting player who experienced 3.1 is just going to sit by and do nothing about the disappearance of Rover's daughter. It just doesn't work that way. People don't like staying still when something dear to them has a non 0% chance of recovery. So, the bottom line for this point, this might be the first time for me to see a community actually use the lore, or rather, their continued enjoyment of the game depends on learning more about the lore. Absolutely unprecedented for me. For the second point that I want to talk about, it's about Wuthering Waves as a gacha game. Technically speaking, no one's denying that the game is a gacha game. That's the obvious thing, and I don't think anyone would even think about disputing that. But after the 3.1 main quest, I feel like I just can't see the game anymore as just a gacha game. What do I mean by this? Normally, when you play an RPG, advancing the main quest line, it's usually a means to get more gameplay unlocked for you. Maybe more skills, a new area, new mechanics to consider, things like that. In a sense, 3.1 also follows this philosophy. We got the Roy of Frostlands, a new mod for the bike, a new boss, things like that. But when I experienced the 3.1 quest, it never felt like the gameplay was at the forefront of the quest. Like, every addition that we got in the quest felt like just props to what really mattered, which was the story. 3.1 felt like a movie to me. Like, it could be its own thing, separate from the game itself, and I don't think anyone would bat an eye if it was a movie instead of an in game quest. And that's when it hit me. Wuthering Waves, because it became dear to me after 3.1, the game ended up being so much more than what it started with, which was just a gotcha game. An analogy for this would be someone like Hatsune Miku. Sure, she's just a voice bank, but as someone who has encountered Miku as early as 2009 with Nightmare Party Night, I've even watched the Project Sekai movie last year, even made a video about that. Miku, she isn't just a voice bank for me. I've lived longer knowing Miku than I have lived not knowing Miku. I'm far from the biggest Vocaloid fan, but Miku has always been one of those constants for me in life. A kind of guaranteed happiness if I decided to listen to one of her songs. In the case of gacha games, there are a few that ended up being more than just gacha games for me. Brave Frontier, my first gacha game, I will always remember it fondly, even if this has one of, if not the worst gacha system of all gacha games. Another would be King's Raid. This being a gacha game is debatable because you can technically just get every character without issue. I also remember this quite fondly, even if the anime adaptation wasn't good. As for Wuthering Waves, well, after 3.1, it has definitely evolved into something that is more than just a gacha game for me. So, why do all of these things matter? Here's the thing. Going forward, if I see a gacha game discussion thread, for example, I simply cannot participate in a thread like that anymore in relation to Wuthering Waves. And no, it's not about some kind of elitism. It's more of the fact that your average gacha game discussion tends to operate on an axis that is quite different. It thinks in terms of gacha rates, full economy, meta characters, things like that. And considering what I've said so far, I don't think about Wuthering Waves in that manner anymore. Sure, it has gacha as its primary means of obtaining characters, but that's just secondary to the experience of the game for me at this point. I enjoy the game because I like the story and I like the combat mechanics, not because of some kind of gacha mechanic or meta philosophy of the game. So, the bottom line here, anyone can go ahead and call Wuthering Waves a gacha game because that is a fact. But if you're expecting me to perceive the game as just a gacha game, I'm sorry, mate. I'm afraid I can't do that. The same way Hal can't just open the pod bay doors for Dave. For the final point that I want to talk about, you know how after 3.1, a lot of players ended up reflecting about their parents or their kids or both, because that's possible for anyone who's already a parent. I also reflected a bit myself about this, and the 3.1 main quest reminded me one of my optional dreams in life. I say optional because it's not the end of the world for me if I can't do it, but it would be great if I'm able to experience it. So, even as far back as a few years ago, every time I look at my parents, I would then look at my older brother and my older sister and me and say to myself that my parents did a great job in raising us. So much that I envied that. I envied the idea of being a successful parent. I don't know if my parents think they're successful as parents to me and my siblings, but if you'll ask me, even if I had a few fights with them over the years, after everything is said and done, I can tell you 100% that my parents did the parenting as well as they did, to the point that starting a few years ago, it became a dream for me to aspire to be a successful parent myself one day, on the basis that I want to know what it's like to see your own child grow up well. You can never experience that if you're not a parent, which is why, even though I'm not a parent yet, even though I don't have a wife yet or even a girlfriend, I can't help but read about parenting threads or books from time to time, because I like to think that I need all the prep that I could get if ever I get the opportunity to become a parent to a biologically related child or adopted, like how Imeth is to Rover. I know it's such an uncommon way of saying how much I love my parents, but yeah, being a parent one day and see my kids grow up well, that is a dream that I hope I'll be able to experience. And just to be clear, I'm not approaching this thinking that parenting is easy. No, I know it's not. I'm well aware that it could make or break a person. I mean, even Rover struggled being a parent to Imeth. So, all things considered, 3.1 as a quest, it wasn't just a terrible quest that made a lot of people cry. It was also a quest that reminded us of our relationship with our parents and kids, if you have any. And remembering my second point in this video, yeah, I don't think gotcha game discussions are conducive to this kind of topic, which is why I can no longer talk about Wuthering Waves in that kind of environment, in that kind of axis. So, bottom line for this third and final point, and as well as this whole video, I think Kuro did a really great job with 3.1. I don't think turning the community's parental instincts on was Kuro's secret plan at all. If anything, that might have been accidental. since it's not often for gacha games to turn their protagonist into a parent. But here we are. And not only did Rover become a parent in just one quest, it made us reflect about our families as well. And going forward, Wuthering Waves as a game, it definitely cemented itself as more than just a gacha game. Not just to me, but perhaps to you as well, your viewer. So, yeah, that's about it for me for this video. Until next time, then, everyone.